and other things into the library, which were basically no one would even consider. So they have some great ideas moving forward in something that's considered a library is like you don't speak, you keep quiet, you're here for studying. They've changed that. They've realized that, hey, you've got to move with what the times are and how the community is changing and their needs are being addressed. And I think that's a very healthy dialogue to include in when we're where we're going with the relationships moving forward. So I think they could be quite valuable going forward. And I don't see that we're going to put them into, okay, so here we're going to now manage how we finance them. And I don't think that's exactly what was intended here. I think what's intended is to put our assets into one area so that we can better address the financial needs for them and resist duplicating when they can coordinate together to be even better than what we have. And it's a great resource. Our cultural assets and organizations can contribute to the economic growth of Aurora. I mean, it's going to play a big role in how we address the shortcomings. So those are just my thoughts on the library. I would invite them to participate and lead the way and with their ideas and share them with us.
Any other speakers, please? Councillor Kim, last word to you.
Thank you. I just wanted to take a moment to thank all the committee and board members of these organizations because they volunteer their time and services and expertise to further, those cultural partners, and I'd be remiss to not, applaud their services because, a few years ago I was an outsider. Now I'm a participant and a contributor, and it'd be nice to have more people take that journey. And I think the big question is how can our cultural partners get that strategy going to get more of our cultural landscape involved in growing the identity of the community. With respect to the clause that the mayor is referring to, the reason why Mr. CEO and I decided to put those criteria is because we do realize that there are many cultural partners in Aurora, and I don't think we have the time to be able to address every single one of them. But I think some of the quote unquote flagship cultural partners, those that we financially support or through our facilities, that would be the first filter and a significant filter that we can use to identify our cultural partners. And certainly I do recognize that there are other cultural partners, but I'm not sure with just our CAO, and I'm not sure who else he might have in mind, that we would have the time or the resources to look at everyone. And so hence that's why we limit it to these cultural partners.
No more speakers, and we'll call the vote, and we'll separate the clauses, Madam Clerk. Just pull the first clause. Yep. So then I can pull that myself, can't I? Thank you. So just then on the first clause, the first therefore clause, all in favor? Contrary? That carries. On the next two clauses, all in favor? Contrary? Motion carries as is. Next one, Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the motion is very straightforward and speaks for itself.
Hold it. You moving it as is?
I'm moving it as is.
Second, Councillor Thompson. Back to you, Councillor Gardner.
Thank you. We saw recently where a site plan was proposed for a neighborhood. The application would have come to council for a general committee meeting and a council meeting. the residents wouldn't have known about it. They wouldn't have been able to give us their input. And, you know, that's what we're here for, to know what our residents are thinking about whatever's going on in the town. But in this case, it was in their particular neighborhood. So I think that it would, I think it'd be respectful that if any kind of development is going on in a neighborhood, that we do the notification, that we do the posting on the particular piece of land or building, just as we do for our public planning meeting applications. And, well, that's it. I just think we need to have as much input from our residents as we can. And it also is out of respect that we should provide notification.
Councillor Thompson. Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Mayor Daw. You know, I share similar sentiments to Councillor Gardner, and I appreciate her bringing this forward. We certainly saw that in a recent application that there is a gap, and while we may not be required, I think we do need to often go above and beyond to keep our residents informed, especially when it's something that can dramatically impact the neighborhood. But I just wanted to ask Mr. Ramuno if he has any concerns with it. So through you to Mr. Ramuno, is there any concerns or issues with providing that notification to the residents?
Mr. Ramuno, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, certainly at this point, I don't have a problem with requiring applicants posting a sign on a property to notify neighboring residents that they have submitted a site plan application. And I can certainly provide a more fulsome report to council over the next month or two explaining, you know, options with respect to notification. But I don't have a problem with requiring developers to put a sign on a property. That at the very minimum will advise neighbors that they have submitted an application, and they can then call the planning department to find out further about what's being proposed.
Thank you. And you know, I look forward to the draft policy and providing comments then, but for myself, you know, I wouldn't be opposed to looking at the same process we do with you know, other public planning applications and actually notifying the residents ourselves. I know there's a cost implication to it, but we can have that discussion when the draft policy comes up. But, you know, too often, you know, I've heard, you know, residents come in and say, you know, I wasn't aware, I didn't see the sign, I didn't get notice. And we've struggled with this time and time again. It's about making sure that the residents have the information they need.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I think everybody around the table sees the obvious benefits of doing this in some circumstances. I do have some concerns. I don't want to call this a motion directed out of a knee-jerk reaction from discussions that, you know, we had over the last meeting with the last development, because I do think that there is a prolonged history of this. So it doesn't come out of that one single application. But through you to Mr. Ramuno, because I don't think this is the right time to be having, again, that discussion around what the pros and the cons are. But through you to Mr. Ramuno, we're asking for a policy to come back to us. I just want to make doubly sure that that policy will have a report outlining things like how many site plan applications we already are approving. Are there any that go straight through staff and don't come to council? Those types of questions to make sure that we're not causing more problems for ourselves down the road.
Mr. Ramuno.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, certainly I think that'll be my intent with a future report, just identifying the current process as it stands, how we deal with site plan applications, how we deal with other applications, and options for council. And again, an understanding of how many of these applications we do see on an annual basis.
Fantastic, thank you.
Any other speakers, please? Councillor Marcus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Ramuno. Mr. Ramuno, is this, I just have one question, quick question. Is this something that we can actually enforce through the Planning Act? Does the Planning Act allow for this type of policy to be put in place and to force applicants that are just putting in site plans to be forced them to put up notification.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, site plan is clear when it comes to, the Plan Act is clear when it comes to site plan applications. Public notification isn't required as it is with other applications, zoning bylaw amendments, official plan amendments. So we can't require applicants to put them through a formal public planning meeting process. But again, I don't see there being a problem with us requiring them to at least post a sign. I will do a bit of research with respect to what other municipalities require from for site plan applications. So there are things that I think we can require an applicant to do with respect to notification. As I mentioned, at very minimum, a sign on the property.
Thank you. And so, you know, I think it's great. I mean, I can't wait to see the policy come back, and hopefully we can do something. My concern lies with, you know, how well we could actually enforce this. And so, you know, I'll wait till the policy comes. I think it's a great idea, Councilor Gardner. And I do think that communication and having the public made aware of what's going on within the community is great. And so, you know, I'm all for it. Like I said, I'll just wait till the policy comes back and draft policy comes back, and we'll go from there. Thank you.
Any other speakers? Councillor Kim?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Muno, you know, to the comment that Councillor Marcus just made about sometimes we're not aware of these projects. Wouldn't they have to go through an application process of the town, and so at that point we would be aware that something's going up?
Mr. Muno?
To you, Mr. Mayor, yes, with respect to a site plan application, a formal application is submitted to the municipality. We do have our, as council is aware, our quarterly planning application status list, which we present to council, and we also place that on our website. So it is a formal application that is submitted to the municipality.
Thank you. I think it's a great motion, and I would support the motion.
Okay, calling the vote. All in favor? Contrary? That is carried, Madam Clerk. Councillor Abel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll move as is.
Second, please. Councillor Humphries. Councillor Abel, back to you.
Well, I think we had a very detailed delegation on it, so I mean, I really have nothing more to add. I thought it spoke very well, Mr. Bunn and the chair of the Accessibility Advisory Committee, Tyler Barker, so I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Abel. Speakers, Councillor Humphries.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree. I fully support, and hopefully we can pick a reserve fund if everyone agrees that $5,000 to contribute to this, and maybe in the future we'll have to purchase our own.
Mr. Elliott, I'll ask the question, the source of funding?
Two options, but I would suggest it's the Accessibility Advisory Capital Fund.
Ms. Van Leeuwen.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we do have funds available in our operating accessibility budget, so we can fund it from there.
Great. Councillor Marcus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I think this is a great idea, and I'm all for it. I'm just curious, has anyone talked to any of the other municipalities on how willing they are to give the money also? Like, I'm just worried, concerned that we're going to give the 5,000, then we're just going to be stuck with the 50 from Wichita Stouffville and 5,000 from us, and no one else is going to give money, and we're not going to have a portable, accessible bathrooms.
Thank you. That's a good question. This has been presented at some of our municipalities at their accessibility advisory committees. And so they are more or less in favor, well, they are quite in favor of it. It just has not been pushed into any resolution for council to consider. So I think if we can distribute a letter advising them where we are and where it is at, and listen, we're so close, if we all just put in a bit, we're doing it, so why don't we all join? So I think the initiative they're aware of it, but we're the ones that are going to move forward with Mayor Altman from Stouffville.
Thank you, and that's great. So, yeah, I'm in full support of it. I think this is a great initiative, and can't wait till we actually have this in use at one of our town events.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. The delegate spoke about the fact that they presented to York Region, but York Region chose to pass. I don't know if you can share any light on that, or if you had heard any reason why York Region was not open to it.
I don't know anything about it at York Region.
Is it something that you could bring back to the attention, maybe as our regional rep, if we choose to fund it, perhaps bring it up at regional council and see if we can get some funding from it through the region? Great.
Councillor Abel, last word to you.
I just want to thank everyone for the support shown, and I think it's great for all our communities, and it's a step forward. It shows where we're at in the region and here in Aurora.
Thank you, Councillor Abel. All in favor? Contrary? That is carried, Madam Clerk. Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Mayor. I will move as presented, and after some very brief remarks, I'll put another amendment on the table onto this.
Second, please. Councillor Humphries, thank you. Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This, in essence, is a very simple motion. It reflects an ongoing discussion I've had with the CAO since his arrival here in Aurora. I think some of our residents would be surprised to know that we don't have any economic development staff in town. We have some phenomenal staff who do economic development work in addition to other duties, but we don't have anybody who has a specific focus only on economic development work. So in conversations with the CAO, he's assured me that he'd be able to meet the timeline that's indicated in this motion. And I'd like to remind everybody that there is going to be no decision made tonight. We are just going to be asking for a report back. Now, with all of that said, Mr. Mayor, there is one amendment that I'd like to make in conversation with the CAO. He suggested an amendment is the best route to go forward to provide some clear direction. So the amendment is that a survey go out to council, relevant staff, and committee members to gauge the effectiveness and room for improvement of the current model as well.
Could you repeat that, please, so we are all aware?
That a survey go out to council, relevant staff, and committee members to gauge the effectiveness and room for improvement of the current model.
Is there a second for that amendment? Councillor Humphries, thank you.
So speaking again, I think it just makes sense that if staff is going to be writing a report on the different models, it makes sense that there's input provided from members of council, staff members, committee members who are directly involved with this, just to provide some direction on what's working so that it can be incorporated into a report back to us.
Just calling the vote on the amendment then. Any further discussion on Councillor Perry's amendment? Councillor Thompson.
Just quickly through you to Councillor Perry. While I understand the rationale to identify the existing EDAC committee, was there any discussion about extending that survey to other committees as well? Because, I mean, you can always look for improvement across the board.
At this point in time, this is a motion about the way that we develop economic development, the way that we deliver economic development. So this right now, at this point in time, relates specifically to members of that committee. However, I have no problem if we're going to send a survey out to everyone from all of our different committees to talk about our structure as a whole. I just think it makes more sense because of the fairly tight timeline on this that we focus it in this direction, and then moving forward, if we want to expand that, we can do it with the other committees as well.
My only comment would be then just depending on the, I guess, the results of the survey, to give staff to give some consideration, perhaps as we move closer to the end of term, to do something similar with all committees so that we can utilize that information to determine how best to move forward, be it this term or next.
To that point, I'm going to go to the clerk, if I may.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The intent is to move forward in January with a survey to all the committee members and council and the public in general on our volunteer engagement and committee structure. So that will be coming forward as an initiative in 2017.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So back to then Councillor Perry's amendment. All in favor of the amendment? Contrary? The amendment carries. Back to the main motion. Any further discussion on the main motion, please, Councillor Abel?
Well, I have been talking with our CAO, and he has expressed for quite some time that he is going to address a new model for the economic development. So I shared that with us. So, and I've not had any conversations with Councillor Perry on this matter whatsoever. But there is a need to explore which method or tools best can ensure growth. So that is what I'm in favor of. I was aware of that months ago and was just about to come when this comes. So it very much supports what my discussions have already been taking place with the CAO. So it's clear what he wants to do, and this says do it in my mind. So I appreciate that.
Back to the main motion as amended then. Calling the vote. All in favor? Contrary? That is carried. Thank you. There is no regional report. New business, general information. Councillor Maracas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually have two of them. I visited the businesses last week in our downtown core, and one of the issues that came up was garbage, and the fact that they're on the same cycle as the residential, and they get picked up every 2 weeks for their black bags, and so they have they start to pile up on them, and so they're just wondering if we could look at possibly changing that specific area to a 1-week service. And I'm wondering, since we haven't signed any new contract yet, if maybe we could possibly look at that and what that would do and how it would affect the contract. So through you, I guess, to Anka, if I guess it's more of a comment if you could just bring that back to Mr. Simonovskis when he gets back, and just let him know. I did touch base with him briefly on it, but just to let him know that if we can look into that. And I think the businesses would appreciate that, because it does pile up and it does get a bit smelly sometimes. So, yeah. And second one is parking at Machel and Irwin. We've had discussions in the past when the development application came in from Treasure Hill. There was thoughts of and concerns that parking would infiltrate onto those streets, and considering a lot of the residents don't have the driveways, and we've had all the discussions about it. So I'm wondering through you to Ms. Van Leeuwen, are we doing anything about it? Are we looking at getting a report back at possibly having permitted parking for those residents on that street, or do we need to put in a notice of motion for this?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we did recently have an internal meeting to discuss parking across the town. Machel was one of the items that we did discuss. And in terms of coming forward with a bylaw amendment to permit parking only for permitted holders, it would require a notice of motion, as it would be a bylaw amendment. In the past, there are two houses on that street that don't have a parking spot, and 2 houses that have a very, very small parking spot. So in the past, we have accommodated those 2 residents with a parking permit, and we can do that again going forward. I think they're looking for a very specific spot that would be hatched similar to Town Park. And we can consider something like that.
Thank you. And I guess, so would something like that require a notice of motion for those couple of residents? Or are we just talking a notice of motion if we did right across the whole street?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think it should come through a notice of motion to direct staff to provide parking permits for those residents who do not have a space, and to hash mark the roads and clearly identify those spots.
Okay, thank you. And so I guess I'll have something in before Thursday, so thank you.
Councillor Gardner.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, at this table, quite a while ago now, You said that a former council had granted money to the Jazz Festival without going through the approved process. I've asked 3 times over many months. The information hasn't come forward. I will then assume that you were mistaken.
No, actually, I'm Councillor Gardner, I'm not mistaken. I gave you an answer. You don't like the answer.
No, Mr. Mayor.
So what I would suggest you
No,
do
Mr.
is-
Mayor, excuse me. You said that you had given me the information, and I did not receive it.
Well, then, unfortunately,
And anyway, it wasn't just for me, it was for council. So,
sorry?
and I did ask you to provide the information again. Where is it?
I gave it to you verbally.
I
But
beg
my,
your pardon?
here's my suggestion, Councillor Gardner. Bring forward a notice of motion, and we'll get staff to work on it.
Mr. Mayor, you are certainly entitled to your own opinion. You are not entitled to your own facts.
That's a
I
great line.
I find that was a very disrespectful remark.
Well, that's unfortunate.
No, I know you insulted me with that remark, not only anybody else in that council. I would like to know what your facts are. I think it's a fair question.
It is a fair
Maybe I'll just
question. I
write a
already
letter
gave
to
you-
the editor, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Thompson, what do you have?
I just want to add on to the Matchell issue, because, you know, I was in discussion with the residents last term and had conversations with our former solicitor and our former CAO. So there was an agreement in place to provide them with, allow them to park on the street during the winter time. There was nothing further about a specific spot, but there was an agreement in principle to allow them to park on the street in the winter time because of those 2 residents that don't have driveways. So, and I still have those emails and can forward it on to Ms. Van Leeuwen if it's helpful, but there never was any discussion at that time about a permanent spot.
Just bring it back. I want to go to Councillor Abel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And we are coming into budget, and for operation, I'm just wondering through you, Mr. Mayor, we do a number of events every year. So it's like the Aurora Borealis, Family Day, Earth Week, Canada Day, Ribfest, et cetera. And I would just like to know for my, and perhaps for councils, what we spend, how much that costs the town, and what sort of resources are we doing? I obviously know a lot of the benefits, but while we're doing our resources, to Councillor Kim's notice of motion, which is to gather some facilities and organizations that way, cultural partners, I just wanted for information to know what we spend on those events, how much they cost us, and so we have a ballpark what's going forward with the, if they make money, then that's the best case scenario. And if they cost us money, I just sort of want to know what that is, because I've never seen it in an online in our budget process. So, Mr. Mayor, through you, could I ask for that information to be made available for a budget? Or could it be delivered to us through email?
Mr. Downey, don't you already have that in your detailed budget?
To you, Mr. Mayor, yes, we actually have a separate special events budget. But we generally blend it in with the entire departmental budget. So I have no objection to separating those costs or isolating the special events costs, which identify all costs associated with special events that are run by the Parks and Recreation Department. It doesn't include events run by other departments.
No, and that's exactly what I was looking for. So, for example, we went through the process with the multicultural event that we just had, and that cost us $25,000. And so I was just wondering how much all those things cost. And I do know on Canada Day Parade that we were getting grants from MP Lois Brown. When she was there, she was presenting a check. So there's ways to let people know how we move these things and how we partner and how we move these things. And I think it's good that I understand it, and the residents and council when we're at budget deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Humphreys.
To you, Ms. Mayor, just further to Councillor Marax's and Thompson's comment, before we put a motion forward formally, is there an opportunity to have a meeting? I haven't been feeling the greatest last 2 weeks, but there's a resident who came forward and had some really great ideas for that road, including the development that's going to be happening there and the impact of that, and the business parking that goes on at the edge of the street. So would it be all right if I contact Ms. Van Leeuwen And any other, I'll send the whole meeting out to whoever wants to join the meeting. He's got some really great ideas, so why don't we listen to that and then see if, at the end of the day, if the motion's required. I don't know, do I say the president's name? Anyway, he's a wonderful person, and he's been really wanting to get together and talk about some of those issues, and I think there's an opportunity for us to perhaps come up with that and then realize a motion when required. That's okay.
Councillor Kim? Councillor Perry?
I just wanted to advise council that the FCM report was sent to me today, so it should be at either the next general committee or council meeting. I've forwarded it over to the clerk, because I know that some members of council love to read through it, so I'm just giving everybody a heads up that they should give themselves an extra 20 minutes over the next week.
Thank you. Moving on to bylaws. We have just two this evening. 589916, 590116. Someone move those. Councillor Marcus, thank you. Councillor Thompson, second. Comments or questions on any of those two? All in favor? Contrary, that's carried. May I please have a motion to go into closed session? Councillor Marcus, Councillor Abel. All in favor? Contrary? We are resolved into closed session. We will be coming back and reporting out. Thank you, staff. Good night, except Samantha.